Good afternoon, board. My name is Rodel Sanchez. Let me see my presentation. So today I'm just gonna, my presentation, we're just gonna break it up in two sections. First, I'm just gonna give you like a summary of what the IRP manager does and how we implement and execute our job. And then, the second part of the presentation, I'll describe a little bit about some of the technical outreach that we conducted during the year. But one of the things, and I would like to acknowledge the team, IRP manager team is just not one person. So myself and Anand Helikar, we do most of the technical review of all this information that PG&E issues to the Waterboard. Anthony Vu and Lorena Baharuna, they help make a lot of these visuals, these figures and these hardtop models that we use for our community meetings, our office hours, our newsletters. And Annie Schwika and Margaret DeAngelis, they're critical and they help, interactions with the community. Annie sets up community meetings. Margaret's the one, calling people to come to the meetings, and she does a lot of technical outreach. So next slide, please. So, as part of our scope of work, which I think that the Water Board got it right in the November 4th, 2015 cleanup and abatement order, we're assigned 6 specific tasks for the IRP manager's role to provide technical outreach to the Hinkley community. So our first is to provide an annual report which contains, our newsletters, any comment letters that we submitted to the Water Board, our presentations when we do our quarterly meetings, and any other technical information that we do during the year. So that report, it gets submitted in February. Second thing that we do, and in our website, we have our community newsletters, which includes, updates from the Water Board, updates on anything regarding PG&E's remedial program. And then we also have sections, just giving information about, community events or some type of history. So we try not just to make it just technical, but, just add other flavors to the newsletter. And the third task that we do is we held a minimum of 4 Hinkley community members, community meetings at the community senior center. And the fourth task that we do, and something that, I think has been very helpful for community members, is we have office hours. So we get to communicate, one-on-one with community members regarding any questions that they have. And, this thing has been really good since, sometimes people don't really want to ask questions in larger settings. So having these small one-to-one office hours allows community members to ask questions and not feel that, embarrassed or anything like that. And task 5 is basically, our most of the work that we do. There's a lot of reports that PG&E issues on quarterly basis. We review all the reports, we provide and we summarize that information to the Hinkley community, either in our office hours, our newsletters, or during our quarterly community meetings. And, task 6, it's, it allows us, if there's something arises like in the future that we need an expert, the cleanup and abatement order has this flexibility to allow, someone that has a specific expertise. So in the past, we hired a toxicologist. That was one of the things that, something like task 6 allows the flexibility for us. If we don't have that, the specialty that, allows us to bring in someone that could and provide that technical information to the community. Next slide, please. So this slide basically describes on how, we perform our technical outreach, and we break it down, and it's equally and distributed in three forms. Relationships. We've been providing technical outreach to the community since 2012. So it's been many years. We were able to build a lot of relationship with a lot of these community members. And one of the things that, before we got on board, people, they wanted transparency, and they wanted someone else besides PG&E to providing, feedback on some of the work that they're doing, some of the interpretation of the data. And it took a while, for people just to, trust. And we're out there having office hours, late nights, spending hours with community members, building those type of relationships. So after all these years, we've had good relationship with the community members. And, one of the second thing is, all this technical information, how do we are able to simplify it and explain that to community members? And as you can see, like later on in slides that we have, we have photo reports, we have visual descriptions, we have our website, and then we also participated as a technical working group at the background study. We're the eyes and ears for the community. And as back, the third item is like, physical. We're out there, we're visible. We have someone on the field, like Margaret DeAngelis, calling community members, building that trust. We have office hours, and we have our office, we have a back room that contains a bunch of these models and posters. So if any community members have questions, one of these models or posters, we're able to answer that. Next slide, please. Oh, next, I think it's like next, yeah. So one of the things and what we see ourselves as, there's a lot of information that's being driven by, PG&E and the Waterboard. There's a lot of interaction with that. And we see ourselves as the eyes for the community. And with all this information that's being shared with the Waterboard and PG&E, it allows us to review, interpret, we use our professional judgment, and we provide that information to the community. And this, this process has allowed a good relationship with the community, has developed trust. And with this information, we presented it to the community, we use it during our office hours. So a little bit of some of the metrics, like over the years that, some of the outreach that we've done to the community, we have over 58 community meetings. We had several open houses. We have over like almost 300 weekly office meetings. We reviewed hundreds of reports. And something that we always emphasize to the community, there is a lot of data on the site. I mean, PG&E collects a significant amount of data. It's one of the sites, I've been working on Superfund sites for over 15 years. And this is a site that, it's one of the most monitored sites that I've worked on. So it's something that, we relate to the community, saying that, there's a lot of data out there. PG&E does a lot of monitoring. The Waterboard does a lot of good oversight. They have questions, that's what they're doing, the right, the appropriate job at the site. We issued around 32 newsletters. We have several community workshops, and we spend hundreds of hours of hours in office hours. Then, like I said before, in TASIS, we hired an EIR expert, a toxicologist, and a facilitator for our community meetings. And we also have all this information on our website, hinkleygroundwater.com. So if any community member wants information, there's a website there for them to be able to download any information, that either presentations or newsletters. All that information is on our website. So next slide, please. So a little bit of summary of what type of technical outreach we did. We mostly focused on the USGS background study, and that's something that the community wanted us to focus on. So we held workshops, and I have a few photos like in the next few slides. And as Kevin and Amanda mentioned earlier, one of the things that to make sure that PG&E meets these remedial targets and the use of adaptive management. So we had several workshops to discuss PG&E's proposed notice of applicability and how it's going to affect the differences to the remedial system. So we had several workshops. We got feedback from the community members, and the last item, that technical outreach that we conducted, was a typical remedial program. Next slide, please. So here's the next few slides are slides that we've used during community meetings. So, something that we always, we try to simplify some of these items for the community members so they can understand. So, the reason why the background study was conducted was because, we wanted to understand, what are the natural levels of chromium in the Hinkley aquifer? Where are the impacted wells? And the background study was redone because, there was deficiencies in the previous background study. And the development of the scope of the background study allowed this to be more transparent. It was something that the community members were asking, specifically Darren, John Turner, and it gave them an avenue for them to provide input in how the scope of work was developed. So the USGS, he heard, the community's concerned. And one of the things that he did, one of the good things that the USGS did, they incorporated some of these items into the scope of work. And it was something that the community was very happy that, the USGS was able to incorporate several tasks that they wanted as part of the community, as part of the way the community was concerned about the previous study. So, during this process, it was one of the things, it was very transparent, even though there was a lot of dialogue, there was a lot of meetings. And even though, the different stakeholders didn't agree, it gave a platform for everybody to provide their input. And, the last person to provide, the rule of law was the USGS. So the study was very transparent. And that's something that as an independent party, we stress to the community about that, there's a lot of transparency, nothing was being done in the background. Everybody was aware of all the things. And, during the planning stage, the community was able to provide input. So the bottom, you can see a schedule, and it's been a very long process, and, something that, I think all stakeholders are proud of, that, and I got to give a lot of credit to Anne and Lisa. I mean, developing the contract and getting the USGS on board for this background study. And, a lot of credit to Darren Banks, Roger Killian. They provided a lot of input, a lot of concerns that the community had regarding the previous background study, and something that they wanted, some task items that they wanted the USGS background study to contain. And the USGS was able to listen to the community and implement those task items as their scope of work. So next slide. So when we got on the project, a lot of people didn't believe that, chromium-6 was natural. So here's a figure that we've used over the years just to show how chromium-6 naturally goes into the aquifer, and has helped out people understand, a simplified version of a model to see, this is how natural chromium occurs, like in groundwater. You get rain, water and soils, they interact, some of that stuff leaches, eventually hits the groundwater table, groundwater flows, and then gets detected at domestic wells. So, it took a while for community members to understand that, and using these type of diagrams, explanation figures, helped out, for people to understand, like this phenomenon. Next slide, please. So as Kevin mentioned before, the background study is very complicated, and we try to simplify this with, saying, it's a process, because a lot of community members, they were asking, why is it going to take so long? Why does it take, 7 years, 5 years to complete the study? But, as part of, the technical team, we told them, it's not just monitoring chromium. You're looking at, the geology, you're looking at groundwater flow, you're understanding where the water came from. You want to understand how old is the water. So we try to break it down and tell community members, there's a process in how this is going to be completed. And there's a reason why, it cannot be completed within 1 or 2 years. It takes several years. The first thing, the USGS is going to do is going to go out there, they're going to collect data. Then they're going to send, some of that data to labs. And some of the analysis of the labs, only took a couple months, while some of the more specific analysis might have taken like 6 to a year to get back. And then once they get that data back, then the USGS needs to review that information, interpret that. And then the way that the USGS, was able to identify if it was either natural or man-made chromium, they use a method called assumptive scale analysis. So they developed 8 questions using a multiple lines of evidence approach. So if they fit a criteria, either that it was either man-made or it was natural, then they assigned either a 1 or a -1 to that. And then once all the questions were answered for those specific wells, then the USGS was able to identify at that specific well if the chromium, based on this, multiple lines of evidence approach, if it was either natural or man-made. And from that, once they were done, summing up those numbers for each specific well that was sampled, then they were able to draw, an interpretation of how they see that the plume looks like. And from that, we told community members, just because he's done with that, there's going to be an internal review by not USGS, but PG&E was able to review, the Waterboard, we reviewed it, and it was a very comprehensive report. It took weeks to review. We submitted comments to the USGS. We had workshops with the community about that. We just gave a summary of the draft report. We got input from them, and as part of what we submitted to the USGS, as part of our formal comments, we included some input from the community on that. And then the last thing is, once USGS completes, their evaluation of the review process, then they're going to finally issue the USGS report. And we tell community members that hopefully, that process will probably be completed by next year. So next slide, please. So one of the things too, like as part of the summit to scale analysis, and this is what we included in one of the newsletters, just to try to explain some of this very complex information that was part of the background study. So one of the things that we told people, what John is doing is he's trying to estimate how old is the water. So if the water is really old, just say, according to some of these natural tracers that were found in the atmosphere, and eventually due to rain, we're able to reach the groundwater. If those natural tracers were more than 100 years or 1,000 years, then at those specific monitoring wells that that the chromium at that well it's natural. However, if the chromium and the age dating from that specific well was within the 50s or the 60s, then that's one part of the lines of evidence that may show that is impacted from PG&E's discharge. So just breaking down like the different components from the background study was something that we sat down and we had specific workshops just to explain that to community members. And a lot of these questions that we have a frequently asked questions section on our newsletter, and it's something that we try to just address that. Just as you can see, we'll use simplified figures, and then we'll try to use like maps, and then like we'll have like a text section just to explain how some of this data that was collected, it's critical for the completion of the background study. Next figure, please. So here's a few photos that we took over the years just to show, all stakeholders, the Waterboard, PG&E, us, community members, just discussing the background study. John went out there. As you can see, one of the photos here, the USGS it's showing community members a handheld XRF, and this was, a tool that was used to measure the concentrations of metals in soils. And when the USGS went out there, the community members really appreciated that showing them, this is how part of the background study was completed. So, that's the thing, is we always try to emphasize and stress that, it's been a very transparent process. There's been a lot of dialogue during this work. Next slide, please. So one of the things too that, people were very thankful for the USGS is that, when we got there, people wanted someone else besides PG&E to sample the groundwater. So USGS went out there a couple of years ago, and they sampled around 70 domestic wells. They had their mobile unit. As you can see, there's some photos of USGS personnel describing, how they're collecting groundwater. You can see, the USGS personnel just describing how the USGS mobile unit worked. So it was something that the community of Hinkley was very appreciative. And for the most part, the data did validate PG&E's domestic well results, and it was something that community members were happy and that work got completed. Next slide, please. So here's another figure that shows USGS actually sampling one of these monitoring wells for the full suite analysis. So there were several times that USGS invited community members to go out there, look at some of this very complex sampling that was conducted, and ask questions. So the community members were very appreciative of that. John Isbicki from the USGS went out there explaining, introducing his team and explaining, why they needed to sample these wells and the different analysis that were required to be performing those monitoring wells. Next slide, please. So here's another thing. One of the items that the community wanted, which basically task 8, is to understand what happens after the IRZ is shut down. And it's something that the community members that suggested that PG&E do. So here's one of the field trips that the USG hosted. So, they invited both PG&E and RP managers. So it was very cool to see, how task 8 was being completed and all the methods they were using just to understand like the chemistry in soils and the reduction and oxidation of chromium-6. So, and it's just another piece of, and we've used this like in our presentations, just showing community members, the whole study was very transparent. Nothing was done behind their backs. Everything was done. Everything was, we took photos just to share with community members. we have photos like this, like in the newsletters, just to show them, all this stuff was done at the highest engineering standards and with a high level of integrity and transparency. Next slide, please. So just a couple of bullet items, from our review of the background study. As I said before, it's been a very transparent process, and something that wasn't as done before, like in the 2008 background study. I think that really made the community members very appreciative of that, and allowed them to be part of this process. And one of the things, we reviewed the background study, and during the thing, there was no surprises for us. So overall, we're in agreement with the findings. And as I said before, a lot of good work was done by the USGS, a lot of impressive work. The Waterboard did a lot of good work too. PG&E, if anything the USGS needed, they provided, additional resources. So, the study was done with the highest engineering and scientific standard. So next slide, please. So as Kevin and Amanda talked before, for the NOA, when it came out, we provided a workshop for that. So this is one of the workshops that we conducted to the community. So as you can see, we use diagrams and figures and presentations just to give a summary of to what the community, what the NOA was about, how it was going to affect. So as you can see, can I get a moment? Just my son just came into the room. Let me just. Oh, sorry about that. My son just came in. It was making noise. So as you can see, here's one of the workshops that were held at the IRP manager's office. So, and community members requested the Waterboard to be there. So just wanted to thank Shelby. She was able to attend the first workshop, and we're able to provide her feedback from the community regarding like the NOA. Next slide, please. So here's just a base, like a map that we prepared for that workshop, just showing some of the changes that were in the NOA, just the proposed expanded freshwater injection area, the proposed expanded extraction area, proposed expanded IRZ, and initial comments from the community. I think they were worried about how it was going to affect the water level at the domestic wells, but as we discussed with the community members, as part of the cleanup and abatement order, if PG&E impacts anyone's water quality or water levels, then they're required to replenish that. And I think that gave a good sense of ease for the community members about that. Next slide, please. So here's a plume map that we typically have on our newsletters and our community meetings, basically showing progress of the plume. As you can see from this, there's hydraulic capture on Thompson Road. There's a lot of monitoring wells that are used to define this plume, over 460 during the fourth quarter, 23 lower aquifer wells, 35 domestic wells. And as Kevin mentioned, all these wells are the domestic wells are below 10. Next slide, please. So one of the things and how we try to show community members how progress is being achieved. Here's a tower plot showing the plume during the 2014 first quarter, and then the plume during the 2019 first quarter. As you can see, the higher the tower, the higher the concentration of chromium. And if you see, you could compare 2014 with 2019. You can see there's been a significant amount of progress that has happened because of PG&E's remedial activities. However, and that's one of the things that we try to relay to the community is that once you get data, then the use of adaptive management will ensure that PG&E is going to be able to meet these remedial targets. So you can see, and what we try to discuss with the community is that sometimes you have to make these modifications, and in these specific areas, as PG&E was discussing and proposing their NOA, it's something that it's going to be beneficial for the community and make sure that PG&E is going to be able to meet these remedial targets. Next slide, please. So just a summary, conclusions, that RP manager activities are all in compliance with the Water Board's November 4, 2015 cleanup and abatement order. Community members were interested in the USGS background study, so we try to focus most of our technical outreach on that, and then the information that PG&E submitted to the Water Board on the proposed NOA. And as I said before, the USGS, has been a very transparent process, and the IRP manager is in agreement with the results. And all the information that we have, that we generate and we provide to the community, it's all could be found on www.hinkleygroundwater.com. I think that's it. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Let's see if board members have questions or responses. Ms. Cott.
No questions. Dr. Sanchez, thank you for the walk down memory lane as you encapsulated all of the fine work done by the IRP. Thank you.
Mr. Dias.
No questions, thank you.
Dr. Horn.
No questions, but I would just like to comment just how incredible what progress we've made. Peter Pumphrey's very first board meeting was the October 2011 meeting when we had 200 people in a room screaming at us. And board members who were there remember that meeting very well. And what we have the comprehensive cleanup and abatement order that allows for adaptive management. The IRP manager has been doing stellar work, being very creative in terms of trying different ways of communicating information, different meetings or one-on-one and all that. Plus, your graphics are fabulous in terms of helping people understand what's going on. The background study was just a thought balloon over our heads at that time, and now we're getting close to it being done. And PG&E's commitment over this whole time has been incredible, and supporting the background study and other work that is being done, the work of the IRP manager. So it's very gratifying to see where we are today, and it's taken a lot of work by a lot of people, and I really appreciate everyone's efforts in getting here. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Jardine.
I also have to compliment, the transparency, you restated it and restated it, the interaction with the community and with PG&E, just over the top. It's wonderful. I was wondering if your newsletter that you send out periodically, is it available online?
Yes, so I could send you an email with the link. So we have all the newsletters in there. So I think we have around 32 newsletters. And then we also have all the presentations that we've done during these quarterly meetings. So I could send you that if you want.
That'd be great. Thank you. Good job.
Mr. Sandell.
Let me just sign on with everybody else. It's been a really great body of work you guys have produced. I've watched it develop, as all of us has gone on. Gaining the confidence and keeping the confidence of the community is probably the most important thing that you've done. So it's great to see this not getting to conclusion, but getting to the point where we no longer have people angry with us. So thanks for that.
Thank you. It took a while for that.
Yeah, it did.
I imagine so. For me, what Dr. Horn said is absolutely true. And you guys have done superb work. Thank you very much for your efforts. Very much appreciated, I think, by everybody involved in this.
Thank you.
Okay.